Mr. Braga, and Mr. Stan. The kitchen staff, volunteers, AV staff, and the Brooks family. Welcome to today's program, which we entitled I Am Because We Are. The first of our full programs given in honor of Black History Month from this 17th annual series of African American Wearing. This series is hosted by the Commission on Education and the Committee on History and Ethnic Pride. The African American Wearing Series is organized with the goal of encouraging the masses to take pride in our heritage and to take actions that will perpetuate the positive attitudes in our people.
People should have today's program, I am because we are, because we're all standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. As youth, we realize that we are not living up to our full potential and attribute the issue to a lack of knowledge about our past. We hope that today will spark a dialogue that will open up new doors and also everyone's heart. Once again, we welcome you to today's program and pray that it will truly be a memorable experience.
I'm going to give you guys, well, Tanya and I are going to give you some views from back in the past. One of them is transportation. On December 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, Parks, age 42, refused to obey the bus driver James Blake's order that she give up her seat to make room for a white passenger. Her action was not the first of its kind. Irene Morgan in 1946 and Sarah Louise Keyes in 1955 had won rulings before the U.S. Supreme Court and the Interstate Commerce Commission, respectively, in the area of interstate bus travel. 9 months before Parks refused to give up her seat, 15-year-old Claudette Colvin refused to move from her seat on the same bus system. But unlike these previous individual actions of civil disobedience, Parks' action sparked the Montgomery Bus Boycott. It's amazing where we are today because of the efforts of these African Americans. Still, we take these bus rides for granted.
February 1st, 2010 marked the 50th anniversary of the day the four African American college men walked into a Greensboro, North Carolina Woolworth lunch counter and demanded to be served. These men walked in with courage and bravery, but most of all to say that we deserve equal treatment. Within 6 months, that Woolworth store was desegregated. Imagine going into Applebee's and being denied service or being ignored and looked over.
School. Desegregation is the process of ending racial segregation, most commonly used in reference of the United States. Desegregation was a long focus on the American Civil Rights Movement, both before and after the United States Supreme Court's decision in Brown versus Board of Education, particularly desegregation of the school systems and the military. Racial integration of the society was closely related goal. The truth. Today, though all that has been done in the past still isn't enough, our youth of today have painted the image in today's society that we're supposed to be treated the way they treated us. We as youth are the future, and the path for us has been paved by the elders. All we have to do is follow and build on it. So far, all we're doing is the complete opposite. I would like to ask some of the elders if anybody has a testimony of anything that happened in the past that they've witnessed.
Well, basically, we know you guys have gone through a lot before we even got here and paved the way or experienced issues that we don't even think about, that we take for granted. So we urge you to tell your story. So I guess, does anybody here have to drink out of colored water fountain? Would you like to talk about it, Ms. Stan?
Thank you. Hold on.
I don't like to talk in mic. You'll stay here with me. All right. He's going to prop me up. I was at Tuskegee at the time that Rosa Parks decided that she wasn't going to sit at the back of the bus anymore. Okay. I was at Tuskegee at the time when Martin and Ralph David Abernathy visited on campus and did some of their work there. I was one of those who the Dean of Students at Tuskegee University had to come and rescue from Tuskegee town because we were testing the waters to see which was colored and which was white, which was tasted different. So there were 6 of us. And there being 6 of us, the dean had to come down and get us before they were going to lock us up. I had marched with Martin and Rep. David. Reverend Abernathy was my roommate's pastor. So when they came on campus, we had first privileges and hands-on being with them and meeting with them. So I had shared those experiences. I'm from a very, very, very segregated school system. Where the whites went up to town and I went downtown, or down to the country part of a rural area in Alabama. We walked to school, they rode buses. I have also experienced horrible burnings of my family's barn, waking up in the middle of the night and seeing huge fires there, and my mother sitting close to the fireplace, almost in tears, and we called it blood in her eyes because we knew the animals were being burned. And I have also witnessed my brother being shot at as the busload of white kids passed by. And they thought he was in the crowd, just so happened that day. And we weren't privileged to do all these things all the time, but that day my mother had given him permission to go to the next school to a basketball game, so he was not in the crowd, but he was their target. So, and my sister, who was here at this church a few years back, helped to desegregate the schools in Alabama. So I have experienced all of those, probably more things to be asking questions, but I don't remember them all at this stage in my life. But I do know that we have that history.
See, that's one of the accounts that we tend to take for granted. Hold on. Sorry.
That's okay. Good morning, everyone. I was just wondering what was the topic about, but when she said segregation and things like that. So I just have something I'd like to share with you. I remember when I was pregnant with my twins. They were born in Alabama, Falkland, Alabama, a little place like out from the outskirts of Utah County. So when I went to have the prenatal care, we had a colored side, and then we had a white side. So my husband at that particular time, he said, we are not going into this colored side, because they don't need to have neither, one or the other. So what had happened, he put me in with the white side, and you better believe they hurry up and gave me my care and got me out of there. But the only thing about it, this goes to show you, it has moved on now, and I don't think they have that now. But I can just want to share this experience that I had, with that in that particular part of the South. Right, thank you.
Good morning. Now, I wasn't born in the South. I was born right here in Jamaica, New York. My parents were from South Carolina, and I did not visit South Carolina that often when I was young. But 2 things I remember. My mother's brother was a dentist in Greenville, South Carolina, and we went down to visit him. And his daughter had to go to the doctor. He was a specialist. I don't remember what kind of doctor it was. But we went to this beautiful office, and I ran in front of her and sat down in the waiting room. And she looked at me and said, no, we don't sit here. We went through the waiting room, back to a storage room, and sat on some crates. So I'm saying, aren't you paying the same kind of money that other people are? She said, well, that's just the way it is. And I remember that to this day. And the other thing I remember is going to the movies. Now, there was one ticket box, and the lady who was selling tickets was on a swiveling chair. So she sold the white people their tickets out of this side. And then when my cousin and I came, she turned the chair around, and over on this side sold us odd tickets. And then we had to go up to the balcony, which I didn't mind because I had better seats up there. But those were my recollections of some of the things of segregation. And I'm a New Yorker too.
Yes, good morning. I was just listening and thinking of when I joined the Army. I enlisted living in Philadelphia, but I took basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So a group of us got on the train in Philadelphia, went down to Columbia, South Carolina, and when we got off the train, the first sign I saw was a sign that said "Whites Only," and that caused me some problems. In addition, as Ms. Donnelly mentioned, when I was in Augusta, Georgia, I would go to Columbia, and I went into the bus station. I just walked into the bus station like anybody else would. Nice, beautiful, big bus station. And I stood at the counter for about 5 minutes till somebody tapped me on the shoulder and told me I had to go around the back. And when I went around the back, it was a little place, just enough room for about 3 or 4 people. And I had to look through this window to get my ticket, because all the white people were on the other side. So, and finally, I had a positive experience, so to speak. I was on the bus on my way to the post, and if you were on a bus that went on federal property, it couldn't be segregated. So when I got on the bus, I wasn't thinking, but I just sat down in the first seat I came to, which was right in the front of the bus. And when we came to one stop, the bus driver stopped and opened the door, and this little old white lady was standing there. And she looked at me and she told the bus driver, "Tell him to go to the back." And I said to myself, "Oh Lord, here we go." And the bus driver looked at me, and I just shook my head. And he said, "Ma'am, would you get on the bus?" She said, "I told you to tell him to go to the back of the bus." So he looked at me. He said, "Sir, would you please go to the back of the bus so this way when we go?" I said, "No, I'm not going to move." And so he looked at her. He says, "Ma'am, get on the bus or I got to go." And she says, "You tell him," and he closed the doors in her face and pulled off.
Good morning. I would like to share with you a story that was told to me by the late Wilbur Taylor. As you know, he was one of the earliest people of color driving trolley cars. And he said when he showed up at the yard, I think they call it a barn, they were surprised to see him coming to drive this trolley. He said once he had gotten his training, some people would not get on the trolley that he was operating, and that goes for many of the black operators. So what the system did, they had gotten 5 trolley cars, all black operators. So if anyone missed one and they tried to go on to another, they couldn't do it. So that's how that was broken up. Another short story. Before Rosa Parks, there was a lady in New York. I forgot her name. I was supposed to go on the internet and get it. But she stood up and did not want to get off the bus or move to another seat. And it had gotten as far as a court case, and she won the case. That was far and long before Rosa Parks. So there are many incidences that we don't know about, and that's one of the reasons why we hope to perpetuate this program so that we can be more aware of these situations. Thank you.
most of you know that I spent the first 15 years of my life in the South. I grew up there in a place called New Bern, North Carolina. And there were separate hospitals. Good Shepherd was a black hospital, and then they had a Catholic hospital, and then another hospital for whites. The schools, we got the leftover books that were finished by the white students. Our science lab was, see that speaker on top of the that freezer? That was the size of our science lab for the entire elementary school. And in general, you walked to school, where whites had the bus. I remember an incident. My father and I were walking to go downtown. He was going to take care of some business. And coming toward us were some little kids, younger than me. But my father and I had to get off the sidewalk because they were white. And if a grown black man stayed on the sidewalk with little white kids, we would have been attacked. That's just a part of it. I know about people riding past, throwing rocks, shooting BB guns. To go downtown one way, we had to go through what was called the White Projects. And you went as a group because you probably would be attacked, or you were very wary as you went, if you went that way. I was in 7th grade when the Greensboro 4 started, and some of the high school students tried to integrate Anderson's drugstore. The principal was put under pressure, and he suspended the high school students, and some of us were taught by our teacher, who happened to be a substitute. We began a protest ourselves to support them. So, and the leadership was churches. They bombed the St. Peter's AME Zion Church. They bombed one of the funeral homes because these people were leaders of the protest. The barbecue joint where whites could go in and sit down, and you had to go around to the back to be served with all black cooks. When they ruled, because it was on a U.S. Highway 17, a federal highway that they had to integrate, they closed down and moved rather than integrate. So I remember and lived through a lot of that. But I want to tell you something that happened probably in the 90s. My brother-in-law worked for a brokerage bond firm, and he was on what is called the desk. Well, there was some problems, and they decided to get rid of some people. Well, the first person they fired was him because he was the only black. Then they learned that he was bringing in 60% of the income of that desk, and they wanted to hire him back. He went to another firm. But understand, this is in the 90s. So attitudes have not kept up with what we've seen. So this is important to remember.
Good morning. I was also born and raised in the South in my early childhood years, and I can relate to many of the things that's been said. For instance, when I was maybe about 9 or 10, we decided that a group of us would try to integrate the ice cream parlor. And we went there, and the policy was cash and carry for black folks. And they didn't call us black, they called us colored. And we sat on the stools at the fountain and waited to be served. And we were not served. And we waited and we waited. And finally, we were grabbed and thrown off the stools and pushed in the street with a warning, and don't you come back, niggers. There were many things that happened with younger children. It was a joke. You know, we laughed. They called us ice cream bars, and we called them crackers. Okay, and we passed that on. But there were many places that we couldn't go. I heard people talking about the bus station, and it was the same where I was raised. There was a sign over one door that said colored. There was a sign over next door, and right next to it, that said white. But when you got into the room, we were in the same room. The same thing with the water fountains, one up, one down, running from the same pipe. And we had colored and white. Well, I'm not going to tell my whole story because next Sunday is my day, and I will be telling my story here. And I hope that you come out. Thank you.
Flip before it. I'm easy. You can have it. I just wanted to bring it north a little bit. I never lived in the South. I was born in Connecticut and raised here in New York. But I was part of busing here in the New York City school system in the 1960s. And in 1966, at 11 years old, I was bused out to Ozone Park to Elizabeth Blackwell. It was a brand new school, junior high school 210. And I remember the bus arriving there. We're scared anyway, it's a brand new school. And we were met at the bus by the white parents of those children in that area, preventing us of getting off the bus. And I was one of the teachers at that same school, and they did not appreciate black teachers in the school either. And I think Winnie Sant remembers that experience because we were there together. Brand new school. But move it back a few years. In New York, I came from Chicago. In New York, I came here for a job to teach. Fresh out of school, greener than the grass. And probably still am greener than the grass. And I was sent by Dr. Lemure, the assistant director of music, to Mass Test for a teaching job at IS 73. When I walked in the door, I said I was sent here by Dr. Mespeth. And the secretary said, we have no ladies which cleaned the rooms in those days. I forget what they were called. Cleaned the bathrooms. Matrons. We have no jobs for matrons here. I said, no, I'm here to take the music job. She literally turned as white as a sheet and went into the principal's office where she remained for 15 minutes and came out to tell me that the principal had just closed the position. We're not talking about Mississippi because my dad was from Clarksville, Mississippi, and my mother made certain that we didn't go down there to see racism. And we had to go down because my grandmother died, and we went down, we saw now I'm going to the bathroom, and I hear this man say, go to the back, go to the back. And I'm wondering, where is this voice coming from? And then I realized, for whites only sign. But in New York, it slaps you in the face for years. I went to Forest Hills, where there were 3 apartments. When I got there, they did not know that I was black. It was really a strange experience coming from Chicago to New York to experience the segregation and the racism that was more overt than I ever found in the South.
I first started my teaching career in Manhattan, and then I said, let me go to Queens because there's a principal there that I know. So I went to the district superintendent's office, and he said, first he looked at me like, what on earth was I doing there? I said, I'm the one who came in to take the position at PS 24 on Holly Avenue in Flushing. He told me, well, my teachers are never absent. I didn't know what that had to do with me. I was one of the people who came to work all the time. And my teachers are never late, and he went on with his whole litany. But he knew he had to give me the job because the principal at PS 24, Henrietta Purcell, was black, and she had been at my other school. So I ended up going to the school looking for these wonderful teachers who were never absent and never late. I said, they're not here. I know they're not here because I don't see them. And went on. One time, even when I was on the staff, I was walking down the hall. I had some nice black leather boots, and one of the teachers said, Ruby, where did you get enough money to get those boots? I said, from the same salary as the teacher that you have. That's where I got it from. But one other little thing. We were down south. I was born in Queens. We were down south, and we were riding along the highway, and we overshot the exit. My daughter Allison, 18 years old, was driving. She starts backing up on the parkway. I said, oh my goodness. And the police come right up to us. I said, these rednecks are going to look at this New York plate and we're going to be in serious trouble. They asked her for a license. She had it. She had only been driving a short time, but she was relieving her father because she liked to drive long distance. But anyway, I was really putting a stereotype out there on those police, those redneck police, because what they said was, we will help you back off the parkway. And they did. Helped us back off the parkway so we could go around this way and go to the hotel. I forgot which one it was. So sometimes people surprise you. We might think they're one way and they're another way.
I agree with Mrs. Simmons. In 1983, when I started my teaching career after leaving Baisley Daycare, I was assigned to PS 63. It was the district office. I was assigned 18 black bottom kids. We took the state exam. Everyone passed. The next year, they had an IGC class. They assigned one of the senior teachers. The entire school was white. They were all Italians, all Chinese kids. There were no black kids. I was the first black teacher in the school. And no, correction, there was 15 black kids that were bused, and the bus was called the white bus to come in. And we're talking about in 1983. That year, I got my second, third grade class. I had a middle class. They had a big argument, and they demanded that the IGC class be given to me, 31 kids, top kids, and the senior teacher who was supposed to get it was really upset. She came to me, and she said to me, I'm really, really upset with you. And I said, you know what? My parents told me, never, ever ride the back of the bus, never sit in the back. I tell my daughter Samantha every day when she goes to school, she always demands that front seat. I didn't know what it was to ride the back of the bus because my parents made sure. And that's my attitude now. Every time I walk and talk with kids, never sit in the back and never think you're less or better than anybody else.
Thank you. Those are all wonderful stories that we all needed to hear. It seems to me that the young people lack the spirit of our previous generations. We are blessed to have the things that we have and to live in the conditions that we live in. But as a great person once said, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. I understand that in those days, times were rough and physiologically pensive. In the same respect, the younger generations need to know their uncensored history so that their true spirit can rise, be free, and soar. With that said, we would like to petition you all to tell your stories to us, the youth. We know that parents, guardians want to protect their children from hurt, anguish, pain, and hardships, but you cannot catch a child every time they fall. For when they're older and you aren't there to catch them, they will truly experience pain. Remember, our history is our story, and it's not always what's written down.
I would like to thank everybody for joining us today in our first African American Awareness. I would like to thank you for sharing your stories with us because our youth need to know these stories, as well as the youth, but you guys are setting a path for us, and we need to follow that path because you guys work too hard for us to come mess it up. With that, I would like to bring Mr. Broadbelt to the front.
Good morning once again. First, I want to thank these wonderful young people for presenting this program, creating this program. And we hope that, in fact, they promise to work with the program, bring it forward, bring new ideas, and make this program last another 17 years. I also want to thank the church school for coming down and let us share this information with the young people. In the hospitality areas, there are many people back there. I want to thank them also for coming and sharing. All of you, as you know, are participants in this program, and we hope that you will continue to be participants in this program. Briefly, I wanted to say that we have our program next week. We're going to have a journey, life story and the presenter will be Mary Childs, who spoke earlier today. We have arts and literature, African American writers, poets, and poetry by Anne Marie Hudley Simmons on the 21st. And we also have in our culture area African fashions by Flora Wayne and friends. So we have a very interesting program. And you know what we have been trying to do for years is to not only have it on Sunday, we have tried to do it all through the years. So we would ask you and invite you to, if you have any material or information or ideas that you would like to bring forth, let's do it. And let's continue this heritage all through the year, not just in February. And one last thing I wanted to say is that the idea is that we have to share this information. Many of us have good information. Let's not keep it to ourselves. Let's share it with other people, the youth and also adults. Sharing this information is very, very important. Thank you. Ruby, you want to say something?
I just wanted to add that a part of African American history is jazz. And on the 21st of February, we will have the Jazz Festival upstairs. And, you know, it's really great that 4 of the people who perform in the jazz program are part of our music ministry anyway. They are just as comfortable in gospel as they are in jazz. That's with Charles Carrington, Julian Myers, Kevin, forgot his last name, and Kendra. So they're all going to be here, and you don't want to miss this because it's almost, a couple of times I said, wait a minute, is this jazz or is this some kind of revival? Because it's really a good program to attend. The tickets are $20, and that includes, there's Charles right there. You can never not recognize Charles, who has really soft white hair. I touched it once. But we want you to come. It's $20 for the tickets, and that includes not only the concert, which is really great, but dinner down here. And of course, that's when I have to ask you again to volunteer to give us the food like you always do, both Caribbean and American, or African American. Thank you. Please come. We have tickets. I do, Flora does, Charles does, Josie, and probably some other people down here as well. Thank you.
One other thing. Thank you for braving the cold weather and coming here today.
Please bow your heads. Lord God, Heavenly Father, thank you for blessing us this morning with your awareness on Black history, Lord. Thank you for bringing us to where we are. Thank you for guiding us. Please protect us on our way into the future. Please guide our youth, Lord. We are your way, your truth, and your light, Lord. Anoint us in everything we do. In your precious name we pray. Amen.